So moms and dads, let's just remember that we want to make sure that we're looking inside to our kids' heart, who they are. And that reminds me of this scripture from 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Try and find those things in your kid's heart that are not so apparent to the world, but that you can pull out and say, oh my gosh, I love when you, or I saw that you just, not a label, but just a recognition of something that's outpouring from them. That is a beautiful characteristic from God. Hey moms, welcome back to the Gather Moms podcast. We are into fall.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to be in this season.
Yeah.
Now if the weather would just catch up.
If the weather would just cooperate.
But I love feeling like we're back in a routine. School's trucking along. Holidays are on the horizon. Things are good.
Yes. I'm so thankful to be back in a routine. And yeah, we've had little glimpses of like cooler weather. And I am eyeing the clothes in my closet that I can't wait to wear.
I desperately want to wear a sweater.
Yeah. I'm looking at them like, I'm coming. Just hang on, buddy. I'm
I
coming.
wore a sweater to church the other day because in our church, it is so cold.
It's freezing.
In the sanctuary.
Yeah.
So when we walk into church and I see people in shorts and sandals, I'm like, ooh, girl.
You bet to freeze.
You about to have them little pricklies on your legs.
I know.
But then as soon as you walk out of church back to your car, you're like, what have I chosen in my life right now?
No, I know. And I just saw like a meme or a whatever reel the other day, and it was like, when you pull out the sweaters too early and you're just in a full-on flop sweat, it's like, well, was it worth it? I don't know.
For the moment I was in church, it was, because I was super comfortable, but yes.
Yeah.
So moms, we know, and I believe deep in my heart that first blast of cool weather like gives you a renewed excitement for life.
Yeah.
Like you're almost like, all right, I'm kicking it into high gear.
I honestly feel that way. So many of our mamas that are like in the Northeast or, in these cooler climates are kind of already getting to feel it. So God bless you.
Well, and they're dreading because they're going to be in it till what, like March or April?
April.
Yes.
I know. You're right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We all have our own things.
Yeah.
So we are in our series called Mama Said, and we're talking about the things that our moms said to us or that we say to our kids.
Yeah.
Some of them are helpful. Some of them are not. It's been so good for me to actually think about the words that are coming out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. And honestly, the number of times I catch myself saying something that we've talked about on the podcast and then going, oh, reel it back in.
Yep.
And so today we're talking about this idea of labels. And so I'm going to start with this. Like a year ago, I started a new diet. I went gluten-free.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of health issues leading up to that. And so it's kind of funny that I'm going to share this because I feel like some of the moms...
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
I feel like some of the moms listening are going to be like, oh, check, that's me. Oh, check, that's me.
Oh, okay.
So listen, if y'all hear this, y'all get on the Google and see what you find. But I was crazy fatigued. I would feel like I had to take a nap after lunch, and it's not one of those cat naps. It was one of those, I have gone into the abyss of sleep, and I'm never coming out.
Yeah.
My brain was so foggy. I literally thought that I was an old person already because I could not remember anything.
Yeah.
I could not think clearly. And then, of course, my gut, it's very unhappy.
You had, because it kind of started, we were like, I don't know, wondering if you had a stomach bug.
Yes.
That had just gotten maybe out of control or had taken over. And
Yes. But no, 6 months later, after being in the bathroom multiple times a day, I finally went to the doctor, which it's funny when I tell people because they're like, why did you not go to the doctor sooner? I'm like, hello, welcome to motherhood.
Honestly,
we do not have time.
No, we let things go on for years.
4 years.
Whereas like if it was happening with our kid,
we would have gone like second week. I mean, probably would have given it a week to be like, hey, you're fine.
No, but it's crazy because you'll look back and be like, oh, I've actually been struggling with this for 2 years.
Yes.
I should probably make
It's
an
time to
appointment.
go.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctor, did a bunch of tests, had the lovely after 40 colonoscopy. Oh, it's so fun to look forward to that. Yes. And confirmed that I had celiacs. So celiacs is a disease where when you ingest gluten, which is wheat, barley, and rye, it actually starts to attack your small intestine. And that creates, of course, like gut issues and things like that. But if you let it go on, it can lead to cancer and other things. So it's a really big deal. So I was not happy about that. I love me some gluten, but I did it.
Yeah.
And I gave up bread and flour tortillas and all the things I love. but I feel amazing now.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you follow your doctor's orders and listen to correct labels, it does make you feel better. And what I read was so interesting that 1 in 100 people worldwide are actually gluten intolerant, but only 30% are diagnosed.
Whoa.
So there's a lot of people out there that are having issues, but they're just not listening to their bodies.
I wonder what percentage of people like actually has celiac, because I'm gluten intolerant. Like, it makes me feel bad. All those symptoms you described were things where I was like, why am I tired all the time? Why? And for me, it's that, so I really do just have to watch it. But I feel confident that I don't have celiacs, because I'm not having, like, the issues you were having were extreme.
Yes.
And we have friends that have, that have been diagnosed, and it's like genetic.
Yes. So of course, we think one of my kids has it. But
okay.
I haven't taken them to get tested yet.
Well,
we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
And I used to make fun of gluten-free people. All my sweet friends, bless you. I made fun of you.
Because they're so high maintenance.
I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing with this menu here?
Yeah.
It is like, and you ask the waiter 1,000 questions. And then you can only have 2 things.
Oh, and I've become like, when we all go out to eat, because it's the gluten-free thing is one thing. For them, they have dairy-free. So I'm always like, if they haven't already told the waiter, I'm like, excuse me, I need you to know, these precious ones, please make sure you do not put any cheese in their food, because it makes their tummies very unhappy,
We're so protective of our friends now. Whereas before I was like, oh my gosh. No, I'm one of you now. Please, all of you, protect me. And it's crazy because flour is everywhere. Yeah. It's in so many things that you don't realize. So some interesting places that you actually find wheat are packaged chili seasoning.
Yes.
Because I keep wanting to buy that McCormick chili seasoning, and it's got flour in it.
Yeah.
So I got to make my own. Soy sauce.
Yep.
Soy sauce has wheat in it. Yep. What in the world? Come on, I just need some rice with soy sauce. So Chuy's is one of my all-time favorite restaurants, and they marinate their fajita meat in beer.
Yep.
And beer has wheat in it.
Yep.
So I can't have their fajitas.
Yeah. So that's one of the places where you and I diverge, because I can handle that. Like, I really, I can eat their fajitas and it doesn't bother me. But you and our other little special friends can't handle it.
And then, so funny, I never thought about these people till this happened to me. But when you take communion at church, you can't have the communion cracker.
I know.
That's a flour cracker.
Well, we have the gluten-free option now.
So at church, they had gluten-free. And this is what's so funny. Greg took the gluten-free too. And I was like, babe, you don't have to be gluten-free just for me. And he was like, it actually tastes better than the regular. So FYI for all of you out there. Listen, don't be taking it from us real gluten-free folks. But apparently it tastes a little better than that little regular communion cracker. So you have to do communion at church. But labels are important for me, because for my health, I have to read labels and I have to know what's going on in my food. But it's not so helpful when it comes to our kids.
Yeah.
And as parents, we have a tendency to label our kids. Sometimes it's for fun because we're joking around in our family, but sometimes it's like impacting our home, and it almost makes us feel better to put like a label on it so that we can just say to them, you're this kid.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we realize the impact that it's actually having on them.
Yeah.
So today's Mama Said phrase is, you're the blank kid.
Yeah.
And something goes in that blank in your home. And you probably have done this already. So if we had a show of hands right now, I think we would all raise our hands, because we highlight lots of things, good things and bad things. And we use it to describe like this kid in an overall fashion that's really not accurate. It's just a part of them that we are highlighting. And you may not even realize that you're doing it, but if you listen to yourself in social situations, when people ask you about your kids, we typically describe them in labels.
You're right.
Like, oh, well, he's my smart kid. He just does so good in school.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my athletic kid. We just love going to watch him play games. And we may not even realize that that's how we're describing our kids to other people.
Yeah.
My kids love to ask about themselves as a baby. Like, they are always like, Mom, what kind of a baby was I? And that's where I go into my labels for them.
Sure.
Because my oldest kid was an angel baby.
Yeah.
He slept good. He ate good. He smiled at everybody. He flirted in the grocery store. He was a beautiful child. I mean, he was just the angel baby. But then my second came along, and he was the complete opposite. So when I describe him, I'm like, well, you were the difficult baby. Because you didn't sleep good, and you didn't want to eat what we gave you. Yeah. And you never wanted to talk to strangers, and you were always in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, God, I feel like that sounds really terrible.
Yeah.
And they just love to hear about themselves as a baby.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop there.
Right.
Because then as they grow and they start to change, they may start to internalize some of these labels that we've given them.
For sure.
Sometimes flippantly without thought. So what are the labels that we're putting on our kids? Kate, what do you think are some of the labels we give our kids?
I think the ones you listed are good. You know, I think it's like, you know, you're the good kid, or my kids are always vying for who's the favorite.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes.
You know, and so we just tell them they're each the favorite. You know, it's like,
oh, not in our house. I'm like, if you want to go unload the dishwasher, you can be the favorite today. I'm like, I'll give you a chance. Who wants to win it today? Come on, kids.
That's amazing. Yeah, and you know, yeah, you're the good kid, you're the smart kid, you're the athletic kid. I think like growing up, I was the good kid, and there was a lot of pressure with that. My middle child, speaking of labels, it was really fun last year. But for her middle school, she was awarded Student of the Year, which is just such a high honor.
Yes.
And I love that she was recognized for being, it was so much about like attitude and
Yes.
effort and, you know, but even like when they called to tell me she was going to win that award, I just felt so proud and excited for her. But there was also this piece of she is so much like me, being very high achieving, always wanting to do the right thing, that I also like immediately started praying, God, do not let this label stay on her in a way that jacks her up.
Yes.
And like, you know, even like this summer we were with my family and my dad was so proud, but he's introducing her to other family members as this is the Student of the Year.
Yes.
You know, and I'm like, let's move on. Everybody move on, you know, let's not make a thing out of this. And she actually made a joke then when we were all with our family at dinner, and she said, well, I hope that doesn't mean that I've peaked.
Yep.
So there was something for her
Yes.
that she had internalized of, what if that's the highest achievement I ever get?
Right.
You know, what if that's it for me?
Right.
Like there was something that she was kind of processing through. And then also then navigating that with the other children.
Oh, yes. There it comes.
Because, you know, they're watching her get this, and
Right.
surely they're internalizing some kind of messaging about what that means.
Yes.
So we had to be like very strategic in the following weeks that we talked to the other children.
Right.
They were not as quick to celebrate her as I would have liked.
Yep.
Just as a family. So we kind of had to navigate some of those things of like, when one of us wins, we all win. And a win for her is not a knock against you, but there were just a lot of things to navigate because that was a big label to put on that child.
Well, and I think in some families, you have kids that are naturally more adherent to rules and following guidelines, and kids that are not. And so it becomes almost like a starker contrast when you have a child that's not naturally going to just do what someone says.
Yeah, and by our culture standards or by our world standards of it's like, this is what high achieving is, or this is what makes a good kid, or, you know, we kind of have this prescription of what that kind of means. And it falls into this kind of particular mold. And so you may have children that fall into that mold, and then you may have children that don't fall into that mold. That doesn't mean that they're not good kids or achieving kids, or it just is it looks different than what our American ideal is, or, you know, our cultural ideal is of what those things are going to be.
Agreed. Some other things that I think we put labels on our kids with, and they're not so highlighting, is you're the rebellious kid.
Yeah.
Or you're the picky eater.
Yeah.
I mean, we say that a lot about our kids.
Yeah, you're the picky eater. That's good. Yeah.
You leave a mess wherever you go.
You're the messy kid.
You're the lazy kid. You're so slow. Everything always takes longer with you.
Ooh, that one's good. You're the slow kid.
So we don't always have positive labels
on
our kids. Some of them, they're negative.
Yeah.
And I think as a mom in my house, it was easier for me to like my oldest was messy. Every time we gave him a drink at a meal, he spilled it. And it was easier for me to just kind of say in my mind, you're the messy kid. Because it almost tempered my response.
Sure.
Because I just knew I was preparing myself.
Yeah.
But I just didn't realize what that was speaking over him when I would say that out loud.
Yeah.
So I see why we as moms do it. Sometimes it helps us, like, get us in the right framework. Like, okay, I just know it's going to take you longer to put your shoes on. You're going to have to go through 4 outfits before you pick one. But we also don't want our kids to feel like that's like who they are now.
Well, and there's a piece of it where the more that we label them that way, then we are looking more and more for them to repeat that behavior, to add back to that narrative. And then the more they start to see themselves that way. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy that we're all playing into the more that we do that.
Well, and for me in my parenting journey, my oldest just got the brunt of my immature parenting. I was not prepared for motherhood, and I thought that I knew what to do. And even though he was such a great kid, I would just say things that were not right. So I'm so thankful that he is a grown adult now and has turned out okay. He may still need counseling, but I just said so many things to him. And I remember, and we joke about it now, we always call him the extra kid because he's never satisfied with the first offer.
Okay.
He always wants a little extra.
Uh-huh.
So if we were going shopping for shoes for school, he would be like, okay, but can I have these that are $50 more because they're cooler?
Yeah.
Or we would go out to eat and we'd like saltgrass is a big deal for us. So we'd get a steak and he'd be like, okay, but can I get a side of shrimp too?
Ooh, okay.
I adore him so much, but everything is extra with him.
Yeah.
It is never just enough. Like I'm coupon queen, so
Yeah.
I'm like base model.
Yeah.
Like we don't need anything else.
Yeah.
And he's like, tack it on.
Yeah, where's the upgrade?
What else we got?
Yeah.
He wants the upgrades. And I know that that's going to serve him well in life at some point because he's a great negotiator.
Yeah.
And I think God could actually use that for the kingdom.
Yeah.
But I just think we put these labels on our kids because they are doing certain things, maybe more than another kid. And then the problem with labels is that they have the power to define who they're going to become. They directly impact their beliefs about their abilities, who they are as a person. And sometimes once they get that label, just what you said, Kate, they're going to expect the same results in every situation. And no, when I label my kids things, I do not think down the road that far of what that's actually going to do to them. Yeah. And I don't think every kid does it. I think some kids shake off labels easier than others. But we don't know which kid is going to internalize that the most. And so we have to be so careful. Yeah. And I think as parents, we want to be the people that help them adjust because there are obviously things in their life that need adjusting. And so it's part of our role as God's stewards of these children to align them with Christ and to help them live lives that are full and abundant. But the question is, how do we do that? How do we speak over our kids' life, but also those things that we know need tweaking? I mean, for me as an adult, I still need people to speak over me.
For sure.
Things that need tweaking. And I would like to think that I'm mature enough in my faith now that I wouldn't make that a label over myself. But I think even as an adult, I still struggle.
Definitely.
I think about the labels that I had as a kid because I was a good kid. I was a rule follower. So even today, when anything is like breaking the rules, it's like I have a moment of pause and I'm like, but that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And so some of the things that were spoken over us, we are still dealing with today. Yeah. And you talked about that a couple episodes ago about the things that we eat, the things that have been said over us. When I was growing up, I was not a big kid, but my other friends were just smaller.
Yeah.
And so I remember people saying to me, well, you just have big bones. You just have big bones. And that sounds like such a nice way to say, you're just bigger than everybody else.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a problematic phrase. Yeah.
So to this day, like when I go in a dressing room, and I try on a pair of pants that doesn't fit, I'll be like, I just have big bones. I do. I just have big bones, Now I can laugh about that today, and that's not like causing havoc on my life. But the thought of one of my kids, like being an adult someday and remembering, oh, my mom always said I was the lazy kid or I was the messy kid, it just kind of like hurts your heart a little bit. Yeah. So moms, what can we do? Yeah. How can we take this idea of wanting to be good parents and help our kids adjust, but also not speaking things over them that they're going to internalize and somehow, hurt their character? So first one I want to encourage you with is to flip the coin, okay? So think about that when we're labeling, we're actually missing the other side of that coin. We tend to highlight the shadow characteristic, the one that's not good. But every human trait has another side to it, another side of that coin. And so maybe we need to find the one that we're missing out on that's the positive side of that. So, for example, a child that is labeled wild. Well, they're just energetic. They just have a little bit of extra energy. Or someone who's bossy. They're going to be a leader one day,
That one, yeah.
A kid that likes to daydream a lot. Well, they're imaginative. That means they're creative. So it's sobering to realize that many of the traits that we value in adulthood, assertiveness, independence, leadership, are actually looked down on in kids.
I think for me, it helped me. For a long time, I felt like I was emotional, I think. And I think it was my mom who said to me, you feel things deeply. And that helped me to see it in that light.
Yeah.
And so that I didn't feel like I was being labeled as emotional or out of control, but recognizing, oh, this is actually it's a really neat thing that I get to feel things very deeply. Like when people hurt, it breaks my heart, and so I feel very deeply, and to go, okay, well then that's given to me by God.
Right.
And so then I just give that back to him to use for his good.
That's right. So rather than overlooking the positive traits in our children, or worse, only seeing the negative, let's just flip the coin. And let's acknowledge that there are highlights to our children's personality that we may not see that way yet because they're still maturing. Just like you were emotional. You had to mature through that. You don't automatically know how to handle big emotions. And then when you get to that next phase of life, you can start to see how those become the positive, Well, how thankful are we to have you as our friend, because you feel deeply, and that means that you want to care and love deeply. For a child that's bossy right now in elementary school, man, I want them to be a leader one day and to feel like they can walk into a room and lead and own the situation. There's so many things in our kids that, honestly, they're kids. They're not perfect yet. They don't have it all together. So when we see some of those negative traits, yes, as a mom, I need to help kind of mold that where it needs to go. But I also need to say, hey, but guess what? That means one day you're going to get to use that for something really good. Next thing, I think we have to eliminate loaded language. Words like always and never, where we exaggerate, almost like it's an all or nothing thing. You always spill your milk. You are always the last one in the car. You never clean your room. Those are not true.
Right. It's not true. Yeah.
And as married couples, we've always been taught, don't use that when you're fighting with your spouse.
I know. I was so thankful to learn that one very early on, of like, you don't get hysterical and you don't get historical. So we don't, in the middle of something, we don't bring up 25 past events.
That's right.
And we don't get hysterical with our words where we use, we call it putting 20 on 10, where it's whatever the extreme version of whatever you're talking about is. Because nobody always does something or other.
That's right. And I think that it's funny you say that, hysterical and historical. I think in motherhood, I gravitate towards those. When I get past my limit, I get hysterical because I have hit the max. You are not in the car. You don't have your shoes on.
And historical.
So then I bring up.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Even last week, you did it, blah, blah, blah. And have you seen your room lately? Like, the room has nothing to do with what we're doing right now.
No.
But you just
start. All of a sudden, you got this list that somehow was in like the back pocket of your brain that was just ready for you to pull out on that kid. And we just, waylay them with just this, absolute nonsense of all these things.
Yes. With my oldest, we were so hard on him with his grades. Everything was a big deal. Even a B was a big deal. And my son this past week took an algebra test. And so I texted him and was like, well, what'd you get? And he was like, a 73. I would have lost my mind with my oldest.
Yeah.
But I have grown in my parenting. And I said, babe, good job. You passed. I am so proud of you. Hey, I know that you probably want to do better, so let's just make that our goal for next time. There are so many ways that we can take our words.
That speaks so much more life than shame.
Yes.
The shame, man, anything motivated by shame inevitably is going to cause damage and fall apart. It just does, shame motivates.
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
I've done plenty of things to keep the shame monster away.
Right.
But so much more powerful for me in the long run, it keeps me free and it keeps my children free, is motivating them toward just better and hope and growth.
Yes.
And, instead of, out of shame.
And I think I have my youngest is a daughter, and I'm really I felt like I did much better with my second child. It's a boy, so I had two boys first. I really think I'm having to rethink my words with my daughter because I do think I try to label her, maybe because we're both females and I feel like females get labeled. I don't know. And I have to remind myself not to do that. That even if she's the kind kid right now, I still have to remind her, you're going to maybe get to middle school and not be kind. Like just because they have a positive thing now, there's lots of situations later in life that might bring out the sinful parts.
Sure.
So to remember that we're just trying to speak life over our kids in regard to, hey, this is what God would ask of us. How can we get us there? You know? So eliminate loaded language. And the last thing, focus on the behavior, not the person. Yes, they're going to make mistakes, so we have to talk about those, but that mistake is not who they are as a person. Mistakes help us learn. So when I make a mistake, what can I do differently next time? So, you know, like you've got a kid in the family, which we had one, it's an arguer. Everything's a battle. They never take anything you say with a yes, ma'am. It's always, okay, but, and then they go into it. So instead of, oh, you're such the arguer in the family. Hey, I love that you are always thinking of more things to say. But you know what? We need to decide when it's appropriate to share those.
Yeah.
So in this moment, I just need a yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I have a rigid kid. Which, I mean, I'm labeling him.
Yes.
And so let's work our way through that. He was the kid who, I mean, even as a 5-year-old, you know, I'm at home with him and I'm like, are you ready for lunch? And he's like, well, what time is it? I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. Are you hungry?
Yes.
But he did not want to eat until 12 o'clock, you know, like he was just rigid. And he's the firstborn child. He has a lot of those firstborn tendencies that are just, there's just some rigidity about it. So the way that plays out is like, if our family wants to watch a movie together that he doesn't know about, he has not decided that he likes it. He is very rigid on, I'm not watching that, you know, which is weird. You're like, just go with the flow, bro, you know?
Yeah.
Or if we need to change plans or people are coming over suddenly or anything disrupts kind of the prescriptive of what he's expecting, he just does not naturally respond well.
Right.
And so we started doing simple things with him as a child. But as a child, I would just sit down with him and we just started practicing. I just said, you know, hey, it's so important that there are going to be things that come up in life that are just not going to go by our schedule, and that's okay. And so as a little 5-year-old, I would teach him and we would say, we're just going to go with the flow. And so he was so little and he was so cute, and he would just say, we're going to go with the flow. And so having to get out ahead of me as his mom anticipating, okay, this is going to be one that's probably going to trigger him a little bit.
That's right.
So let's remind him to go with the flow.
That's right.
And so even now, as he's gotten older, that stuff is definitely still happening. And so when I know something's about to happen or we're going to change plans, I'll call him into my room and say, hey, I need to give you a heads up. I know that you really prefer when we have a clear schedule or we know what's going on, and I get that. I need you to know that's not the way things are going to go today. So let me tell you kind of what's happening.
Right.
And we'll talk it through.
Yes.
And sometimes he still gets a little triggered.
Yep.
And we need a minute. But for me, it was helpful for me to just see, I'm really thankful for the growth that I could have just labeled him as rigid.
That's right.
And we could have stayed there, and it could have been something where we just butted heads about for forever.
Yes.
But instead it was like, okay, hey, this is an opportunity for growth for you.
That's right.
And so we're going to just kind of start looking at how can we get out ahead of this and help you grow in this area. Because per what you've talked about earlier, some of those disciplines he has are going to serve him so well in life.
That's right.
He is very disciplined. He keeps a schedule. He, you know,
yes,
like that kid, he's not going to sit around and play video games all day. And
right.
He is very disciplined.
Yes.
But so just countering that with where do we have opportunities for growth, even in that behavior trait?
Well, and I love that you highlighted that because so much of our life is we grow in the hard spots. Mm-hmm. So when I'm great at something, I don't tend to grow there because I'm already good at it.
Yeah.
So it's as a parent trying to find those hard spots in our kids because we know that's where God has so much growth for them.
Yeah.
And when we think through, how can I help you like manage this hard spot? How can we like thrive in this hard spot? How can we look down the road and go, oh, this is going to be so good later in life? You know, moms, we have to be so creative with our kids in that regard. We have to look at our kids that God gave us, specifically the personalities that he put into them
Yeah.
the things that we might go, man, I wish that was not who you are, but go, God has a purpose for this.
Yeah.
What can I do to help you achieve that purpose?
Yeah.
All of us had that when we were kids. We may not be able to remember it. Our moms may not be able to remember it because I'm at that phase in motherhood where I'm like, I don't know what your first word was. I don't know where you took your first step.
I know, ball.
And I used to get so mad at my
make something
mom,
up.
like, why do you not remember? And now I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know? So sometimes you don't remember. But to go, I know I had those same things in my life. So I want to be a parent that sees those and helps my kid get to the next place. And I do think there's some labels in our society that are more common than others. I think academics is a big one.
Yeah.
We really do label kids the smart kid or the academic kid. And I think that's very hard for kids that are not that, because they see the praise and the reward that comes with that. And of course they want that as well.
Yeah.
But that just may not be their gifting. Because I'm teaching this year, I'm seeing that in a new light. So many kids that are just not quite making the grade, but they're such great kids.
Yeah.
And wanting them to see that that's not the end for them. You know, no, you may not be that straight A kid, but my gosh, you have this and this and this and this.
Yes.
So really helping our kids with that. I think athletics is a big one too. Mm-hmm. We as parents of little boys and little girls want our kids to be super successful at whatever sport they choose. And then they get labeled that. And the problem is during puberty, when their bodies grow and their hormones change, some shoot up, some don't, some get better, some don't. So you may be great at 4, but you may not be great at 14.
Yeah.
And so trying to really help our kids see that there's a lot there where you can nurture yourself, work hard, discipline, get some skills and training, but you're just may not going to be that star player because you're not naturally gifted that way.
Yeah. And the whole idea is to give your best, to have fun. Can we just talk about just please have some fun in the sport?
Yes.
We've gotten way too serious.
Yes.
And I love the advice of, you know, when we get in the car with our kids after the game, that we're not picking apart how they played. We just keep our mouths shut.
That's right.
We have not been hired to be their coach. They don't need it from us. But we just say, we love to watch you play.
Yes. Yes.
Love to watch you play.
I think we also highlight appearance a lot in our kids. And I think as parents, we have to be so careful with that. Boys and girls.
Yes.
You know, when you are out and about with your friends and they say, oh my gosh, you're so handsome, or your mom posted a picture of you, you're just so beautiful, but then you've got another kid standing close that doesn't get that praise. You know, make sure that you really help guide even your friends and how to talk to your kids, because we want them to know that it's not about appearance.
Yeah.
And then I think too, for the quiet, shy kid, we sometimes relegate them to the back. Like, oh, well, you're just not going to try to be student council president, or you're just not going to try to do this. You know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
They don't all have to do that.
Yes.
And some of those quiet, thoughtful, introspective kids turn out to be amazing leaders.
Yes.
Because they are so deep in their thinking and wise.
Yes.
So moms and dads, let's just remember that we want to make sure that we're looking inside to our kids' heart, you know, who they are. And that reminds me of this scripture from 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Try and find those things in your kid's heart that are not so apparent to the world, but that you can pull out and say, oh my gosh, I love when you, or I saw that you just, not a label, but just a recognition of something that's outpouring from them. That is a beautiful characteristic from God. I also love Acts 4:13. It says, when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they were uneducated, common men, they were astonished, and they recognized that they had been with Jesus. To remind ourselves that the things that the world is going to highlight and label our kids are not the things that are truly going to be successful in God's kingdom, because it's more important what we've done in our relationship with Christ. And so pointing our kids back to that. Hey, you know what? That may not be something that you're just naturally good at, but let's go spend some time in prayer, or let's read God's word about some other people in the Bible. What did God highlight in them? How did God grow them? Because those are the things that are going to actually be the eternal things, right?
Yeah, and just making sure that we're saying over them the truest things about their identity. You're a child of God. You're a masterpiece created by God. You know, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Isn't that amazing? You know, we have all of these wonderful things we can say over them. When we did Good Day Gather, one of the one of the weeks we did was Good Evening Gather, and we talked about blessings we can say over our children at night. So I wrote one, and I've been saying it over Caroline. So I'd love to share it. So she says, God created me. The Father loves me. Jesus died for me. The Holy Spirit is with me. Mom and Dad are blessed by me. And she says that every night.
I love that.
And so, as she drifts off to bed, these are the things that are true about you.
That's right.
And we kind of have talked through those various things, but that she would know God created me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, my prayer for her is that would drip so deep in her soul, that when she does question her appearance or things about her, that would hold for her.
That's
God
right.
created me.
That's right. Yes.
And just each of those pieces, Jesus died for me. The Father loves me.
Yes.
The Holy Spirit is with me.
Yes.
Mom and Dad are blessed by me.
Yes.
That she would always know what a blessing she is to us.
Yes. And that's the last thing I want to say is that more than anything, the word that we need to speak over our kids is that they're loved.
Yeah.
No matter what you do or say or look or how you acted today, all those things can be dealt with. Like we can have conversations about that. But the most important thing our kids need to know is that they're loved, that in our home, they are safe, that this is where they can be their true selves with all their flaws and shortcomings and know that mom and dad are going to receive them and that we're here to love them through it. Yeah. I just think our world today is so tumultuous. And when they walk out our doors, there's so many things that are going to tear them down that the thing we need to do most in our home is build them up.
Yes.
And we don't have to build them up with these like hyper qualities the world says are like great and awesome. You know, that's not going to make them better people.
Yeah.
We can build them up with the things that scriptures told us are most important.
Yep.
And so, Mom, just remember that you do love your kid, even on those hardest days where they have spilled everything and been slow and messed up it all.
Yes.
You do love them.
Yeah.
And so look down the road a little bit farther and go, what do I want you to grow up to be? And how can I speak words right now that will fill that in your heart?
Yeah,
So,
that's beautiful. Thank you for that reminder.
okay, moms, we love you so much. Thanks for joining us for this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, moms.